Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Hey, good to see you, Gabriel. Hey, good to see you, Surojit.
good to see you, Vincent.
Awesome. We'll give everybody a minute to come on stage. The, the panel. And nice to have you here. I think Arvid actually came from another stage, so he'll probably need some time to join in as well. But good to have you here. And everybody, super nice to see you all entering this stage. Today's panel is going to be all about AI, on how it's transforming the ways on how we work. And I'm super excited to have you here, Gabriel and Surojit, and obviously as well, looking forward to having Arvid to join us as well in a minute. So maybe what we could do is, while Arvid is joining us, I could start with a quick round of introductions so that everybody knows who's who, and then meanwhile Arvid will join us. So as I said, maybe quickly introducing myself. So I'm Vincent. I'm a partner at BOI, and super excited to join the panel and moderate it here today. And I'm here with Gabriel. Gabriel is the CEO and co-founder of Dust, a leading company in personalized AI assistance. You've previously worked at Stripe, OpenAI, and you've supported a team by streamlining workflows and increasing workers' impact through custom AI assistance. And hey, good to see you, Arvid, to join us as well. And super excited to have you here and to share your story about your experiences on how AI can improve the workforce. And then Arvid, for those of you that have been in the previous session, have obviously know him as well. So Arvid, Jain is the CEO of Glean. He's a seasoned entrepreneur who founded the company Glean in 2019, but obviously now it has surpassed close to the 5 billion valuation, making it a unicorn. So super excited to have you here and to see how you can share your perspective on the world of AI in the workforce. And then I'll end off with Surojit, the founder and CEO of EMA. EMA enables AI employees to integrate seamlessly with enterprise tools and work with human colleagues. So the idea of what an AI colleague can mean in the workforce. So really excited to have you all here. And let's kick it off with maybe some fire starter questions. Maybe curious to know from you all, what's the one thing that you think everybody's getting wrong about AI? Anybody that wants to start?
Sure. I mean, I can say one thing. I think there's a lot of discussion on AI being a beacon of efficiency. Like you can use it to actually have fewer people at your work, and a lot of focus tends to be on that. I feel AI is so much more about like doing things differently, doing things that you couldn't do before, and as a tool that's actually should primarily be used to think about how to increase the top line of your business as opposed to fixing the bottom line.
Awesome. And Gabriel or Surojit, any thoughts?
I can chime in. What I see in customers, like talking to customers, there is often over expectation and under expectation at the same time. It's like, okay, I'll put some AI and it will just work seamlessly, and I don't have to do any more work. That's over expectation, or under expectation, which is, oh, AI doesn't work at all. I'll sit on the fences and watch and come in a little bit later. Like I don't want to take the risk at this point because people have got burnt. So it's not one thing, maybe two things. That's
awesome.
what I see. Go ahead. Yeah.
One of the things that I still hear a lot of people misestimating, in my view, is that you need to be very technical to make AI work very well for you today. And I think we're regularly amazed at how non-technical people, but with the right ideas, can get very concretely value from the technology that's available today in the workplace. So that's one thing that I feel people are still sometimes getting wrong.
Love it. Yeah, really good to get these first perspectives out. And maybe in the meantime, nice to see more people joining us in this panel debate. So feel free to post your questions in the comments, and we'll discuss them in the Q&A at the end of the call. So let's go into the first topic. So that thing that you've just highlighted, Gabriel, of ROI. I just read a report from Microsoft on the future of work, and yeah, AI is often described as that one tool that will drive productivity. So it really raises the stakes. Everybody's got super high expectations of what it will do, but obviously it's hard to sometimes find the proof points. And would love to maybe dive a little deeper into what you guys define and how you find ways to define that ROI. So maybe a question for you, Arvind. Can you talk to us about how to put some sort of that number behind the impact that enterprise AI tools have?
Absolutely. So I think like one thing with AI is like it saves time. So like, a very typical way to measure, like, when you bring a productivity, like conversation bot, like a tool like ChatGPT, where people can go ask questions, get answers quickly, and as a result, like move faster. So time savings tends to be like, one metric, that people use for like, how much productivity, how much ROI I'm getting from AI. But that tends to be fuzzy, like, like for example, with Glean, people measure and individuals report that they save like 3 to 4 hours of time every week because of this tool now. It makes me faster to find things, like you can get answers to my questions. And so sometimes people are happy with those kind of measures of ROI, that, well, 4 hours of time saved, that basically means so many millions of dollars, like when I think about how much I have to pay people for those many hours. So and some people are okay with those kind of savings, but then some other some CFOs will say, well, like if I save time, like maybe the person just actually works not as many hours anymore, or maybe they're having a longer coffee break. So then you have to actually think about, well, no, like you need harder measures of ROI for any AI investment that you make. But so when you think about going to specific business processes or like specific personas, I take customer service as an example. In customer service, if you're able to resolve cases 20% faster now than before, so that's actually like a very hard dollar, because you have a very clear measure of how many dollars you pay per ticket, and like now you're paying, since you're doing it faster, you're paying less. So that's a hard ROI metric. And so when you go functional, like or task oriented, and this is where AI agents actually are easier to actually measure. It's easier to measure the ROI for them. These are all standard business metrics that you already have in place, like for those different teams.
I love it. I think it's a good point that actually the idea of AI agents, that's easier to measure the impact because they take almost full tasks. They solve things, so you can almost reduce headcount or have tasks to be done with a larger team, partially human and partially AI agents. So I really love that. And I do agree that if everybody's taking longer coffee breaks, that would not be a great solution. So maybe on the intangible benefits, potentially curious to get maybe anyone else's thought on that idea of what are the key elements that we see as intangible benefits of AI in the workforce.
I think it's an interesting flip side to the ROI conversation. And I guess the two keywords that come back to us often in conversation with customers are about empowerment and agency. Instant messaging in companies was not a thing. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find a very clear way to discuss the ROI of instant messaging within companies based on number of seconds saved going across the corridor or across the room. But there are companies that have instant messaging and companies that don't. And I do think they appeal to different kinds of employees and team members. Do you want to work at a company where information is very siloed and it takes a week to get an answer back from your manager? Or do you feel that sometimes it's okay to just have a quick question, a quick answer? I think that's one of the intangible ways in which empowerment can manifest. And on agency, I think that one of the ways in which people are discovering concrete benefits of AI locally within their team is the ability to create very close and short feedback loops with small concrete experiments and examples. And so on the topic of agency, you had to have a technical team come in, identify which were the highest value use cases, tell you that 3 months later they might have a proof of concept, and that 3 months after that you might have an agent working. And we've shortened those timeframes a lot. But I think what's actually the interesting flip story, which is not necessarily as tangible, is that it is promoting in the workplace mentalities and mindsets of people who see a problem and understand a concrete way to fix it, because it's shortening the time frame for them to actually prove that their idea is correct. So it's really highlighting high agency, high empowerment individuals within those teams, because they tend to have much more to show for their ideas than in the old world.
Awesome. And I think that's actually already a very good connection to the question that Miriam shared in the comments on how we can make sure that work remains meaningful, fulfilling, and connected to the human side. So how can we really amplify people's jobs with it? So I loved the answer, Gabriel. Maybe a final question on this topic of ROI, Surojit, like how do you see the ROI for human AI collaboration maybe evolving over time? So a more future forward perspective.
So we are an agentic AI company, right? We build AI employees that work on end-to-end kind of business process automation, from customer support, sales automation, HR, employee experience automation. So one thing we look at, our customers look at, is not just kind of the time saved, productivity growth, but also the end user satisfaction. For example, customer support, there is another measure of ROI, very tangible measure actually, is what is the CSAT? And we see consistently, because AI agents don't have like a rough day at home and don't get pissed with if the customer insults them or whatever, they're more consistent. And the CSAT is consistently higher, 30-40% higher than average human agents. So almost close to the best human agents, right? Who are probably keep their calm in dealing with human people complaining about issues. Same with like HR or employee experience, same with sales automation and other places. So what we are looking at is how a new team, which is AI and human working together, that's going to be the future, where it's not just human, not just AI, some humans and probably a large number of AI agents working together. What's the productivity of that team? And what's the tangible output measures of that team? Like how do every company has like measurement of how a team is performing, right? They have KPIs, and those are not just productivity, those are output, those are customer satisfaction or NPS score and so on. So we are encouraging our customers to use those same metric that they will use to measure effectiveness of human teams, to measure effectiveness of these new teams which have human and AI working together.
Yeah,
I love that.
If I can maybe jump in on that, because I think I was excited about maybe the debate part of this conversation, where if Surojit, Arvind, and I agree about everything, then maybe people
go
are
ahead.
Go
yes, exactly.
Coffee. So one of our mottos at Dust is augment, don't replace, and that's because we're focusing on a part of the market and a part of the companies where we think there's more value and upside to find in giving people the exoskeletons that they've dreamt of. And it's not to say that I don't think some automation makes a ton of sense. I really believe in what Emma's doing on those cases, but we tend to work with employees that have more of a sort of high agency knowledge work definition, and where replacing them end to end is not necessarily a concrete or realistic use case today. And I think in those cases, the case for human AI collaboration is exciting, because what we've done over the last 100 years, you could argue, or at least over the last 70 years since World War II and increasing automation in the workplace, is try and make the tasks that didn't really call people's brains a lot easier and go away, and try to focus on the tasks that the brains were uniquely equipped to solve. Now, somewhere along the way, we may have gotten a little lost. And I think that people might argue that the workplace doesn't feel as fun or as creative or as calling for brain power as it should be. And in some cases, quite alienating. Like the second series of Severance just came out, and people are thinking about literally a show that's about wiping your brain every time you go to the office and forgetting about it. And that's because I think we're actually quite bad at understanding what humans' total value to a company or a team is. And so we tend to think about the things that we can measure. And sometimes when we don't measure something, we're not really good at understanding once it's gone away, why things don't work as well. I come from a country, France, where we tried to reduce the time that it was legally okay to work every week, expecting that by doing that, more people would have jobs. And then we did it, and there weren't more jobs. And people sort of scratched their heads. And I think the reason is people confused tasks and roles within companies. So where I feel that Surojit and I really agree is on the ability to get rid of some of these tasks. And then I think there's going to be this long process of understanding what people's actual roles and value to the entire system they're a part of is, because I don't think we're measuring it or able to really document it that well today. And that's going to be a really interesting frontier to continue to work on together, that some companies will explore faster than others, and that I feel could be a competitive advantage for the companies that do that.
Yeah, I'm actually in violent agreement with that. Sorry, Vincent.
The debate is for later then.
Just wanted to add this. Look, the reason for me to start this company was precisely that. I worked at Google for a long time. In fact, Arvind was at Google also in early days. And even at Google, that hires really talented people, half of the time, more than half of the time, is just spent in KTLO, keeping the lights on, like doing tasks that don't require that much creativity, but you have to do them to keep the lights on. And if you free people up, talented people up, to do more creative work, more value-added work, I think everybody is happier. Going back to Gabriel's point.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really good point, and I love the debate. So let's keep it coming. One reminder, I was also checking some of the questions, and something that we shouldn't forget is definitely to also think about the perspective of people outside of the office domain, and maybe in logistics or supply chain or any other part of the business that is not specifically in the office. And that's maybe something we can take into account when we dive into the next topic. One thing that we also...
Vincent, on that, I saw the question. I was so chomping at the bit. I think maybe we're all going to be in violent agreement on this here, and it's more a question of how close to the actual technology we're spending our days and understanding what it can do. But the use cases in the field of this technology, whether it's retrieving information in 500-page manuals and understanding with a very concise answer how to operate heavy machinery. This is something that people are doing today in diamond mines in South Africa, using the same technology that's allowing people to find the answer to a recipe online, right? There are very concrete ways in which it helps people that do not spend most of their day at the computer, but need access to information in a way that's really concretely useful to them on the spot. And that's to take information from the manual. When you're putting information in, just think about the number of minutes spent worldwide punching information on keyboards that is now being streamlined by people being able to do voice to text in very, very effective ways, filling out complex forms, people being able to speak in their own language and being understood with immediate translation. These use cases, the list could go on. I think it's really important to not box them in the desktop and imagine that they're just for people with Excel spreadsheets.
Exactly. Awesome. And let's take the time to dive into the next topic. With that is on the trust and collaboration. So if we're working in a setup where human and AI collaboration is at the center, it's important to know what trust plays a big role, like how people will trust these agents and how that would work. So curious to know, maybe, for example, for you, Arvind, on how do you believe that, for example, a human in the loop system or an approach helps you to build those better AI workflows and help to build trust among people?
Yeah. Well, I think first the AI technology, while it's very powerful, it's also somewhat random in nature. It can always make mistakes, and so today that's a necessary step. If you're actually taking any serious business process, I think leaving it to an AI agent to actually complete that and have no supervision, it really makes no sense. I think you're not being responsible if you're doing that. So I think human in the loop is important, but I think that if humans are also we have the tendency to actually accept work that somebody else does, because oftentimes you don't have time to review it, and so you have to be careful on that front. So like as an example, take a tool like I think like a lot of conversational tools, like agents are conversational, where you ask them to do some work, they do that work, they show it to you, and like my tendency is going to be just say, okay, well, sure, like this must be it, and I move on. The agents, like you have to sort of make sure that the agents that you design or that you use actually show you, like show you their work, show you the like the proof of like whatever work they did, why it actually was correct, actually use authoritative human information that they actually then ended up summarizing or using to do some further analysis, right? So that's an important part of like building agents is you should you should get these AI products, these which are able to not just do work for you without like explaining how, like the human has to be in the loop, and the human has to be prompted, and you have to make it easy for that human to basically validate and the work of AI. That's sort of like how we are seeing, and in fact, like enterprises that we work with, they demand that, like so everything that we would do with our agents is like that constant emphasis on the like don't think of AI as any more than a a tool, and use its work, and like the human still sort of like is firmly in control, and like measures like any work that AI does.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think thinking about this technology as helpful, sometimes overly eager interns is one frame of mind to try and understand why during all of our first internships we spent 2 days working on something, and our mentor or our boss would come back and poke 3 holes in 3 different places and sort of tear the whole thing down, and we were like, how did they do that? And that's what the part of their brain was being most used for, is actually the analytical, the critical sense to comprehensively look at a result and say, you know what, if this reasoning bit is not clear and I just push on it and it doesn't hold, I'm not going to trust any of it. So I really think we're in an era of having to switch our brains on rather than turn them off when getting exposed to this technology, because this technology will favor those who are able to appreciate a stochastic mindset and take it on and say, you know what, the 2 answers are not identical, but they mean the same thing. I take them as valid. Whereas for 75 years, we've been getting used to machines as calculators, punch in the same keys and get the same results. The world is moving now. We won't get the same result. The real question is, does the result need to be exactly the same in order to still bring value to your work? And I think that's really a challenge that teams and individuals need to understand, appreciate, and take on, because it will call on their higher executive function.
Love it.
Yeah, I
And,
think.
go ahead, Surojit.
Sorry, Vincent. I was just going to add that there's a very important point both of them touch on, which is how the role of humans will change in the new workplace. There are a lot of AI agents. And I always think, like what Gabriel was saying, right out of college, you will need to learn how to be a manager of agents, not humans. And this skill is not taught today, right? You become a manager after 5 years, 10 years, whatever, right? So because you have to manage, you have to be able to give feedback, effective feedback to AI agents, the same way you would have to do in the past to human employees, right? And that's something to think about. There's a lot of, I see chatter on the chat that, oh, what will humans do? I actually think humans will have even more important role, which is how do you manage this complex workforce of humans and AI together, and sometimes just AI agents that you are managing, and will need to learn how to work with AI agents. And it's not like humans' role will be minimized. I think it will be expanded, because overall every business will expand using these agents.
Yeah, very good comment. And I think it's that I would love to make sure that we cover that as well, the idea of the role of humans versus AI and how the role of humans will change. Maybe while we were discussing this, I think we've touched upon the idea of AI adoption and the idea of trust, obviously. And I saw a really interesting question here from Virginie on which business function is actually mostly driving AI adoption to reshape the future of work. Is it really HR? And that's an interesting point. Like, who's driving adoption? Anybody that wants to tune in on that question?
I have strong thoughts on it. Oh, sorry. Feel free to start on it.
I was just going to give a quick answer. I think like what we see, like we work with, a large number of, enterprises and businesses. Today, like, AI, like, has been, AI adoption has been driven by, core R&D engineering teams, customer service support, and then to some extent, like, also sales teams, wanting to actually, optimize, like the process of finding customers. So I think those are the three big teams, and I think it makes sense because they also tend to be the larger teams, like in enterprises, and they get super excited with the efficiency potential of AI. So those have been the teams that have sort of pushed for AI, but I think there's also the other force, which is the CEOs and at most enterprises are actually also pushing for company-wide adoption of like AI technology and that upskilling and learning of your workforce with AI. And so those kind of initiatives sometimes are driven by either like the centralized IT technology teams or by the HR teams.
Awesome. Gabriel.
Yeah, so Dust is a very horizontal product, and we try to work with companies that have this ambition of deploying it as broadly as possible. What I tend to tell CEOs of enterprises adopting Dust is, my promise to you is that this is going to be heat-seeking software for empowered talent. And it really fits a mindset more than a technical skill set. And it's going to fit a personality and an attitude towards technology rather than a specific function. And what we end up seeing time and time again is that the adopters of AI in their teams tend to share this confident, entrepreneurial, experimental and iterative mindset that is happy to dive in, try the technology, start understanding its limitations as well as its possible applications, and communicate across the company in an unsiloed way, which is actually what leaders want at their company to see happen. So one of the reasons I tend to believe that companies are almost always too conservative in being proponents of wide adoption is that they're not able to predict exactly who's going to be great with this technology, because I don't think anybody's been trained or performance reviewed on the ability to take stochastic technology, make it your own, and apply it to concrete use cases locally. So that's something that we're seeing as very exciting. And I have lawyers and marketing people talking to each other about how to extract information from PDFs in a way that I don't think many HR teams were expecting to have happen a couple of years ago.
Awesome. Great. Surojit, any thoughts you want to share on this topic as well before we transition into the next one?
Agree with both Arvind and Gabriel. We are also a horizontal platform, and we usually encourage business leaders, CIOs, COOs to think about where they're spending kind of most of their time in doing mundane, repetitive tasks. How can they free up talent to do more useful things? So again, customer service is a very obvious application. We have seen employee experience, internal kind of operational efficiency kind of use cases, sales, as Arvind mentioned. But then we have customers who are using us for like, streamlining, say, audits or streamlining claims processing, healthcare, streamlining healthcare processes. The opportunity is very large. And it's it needs a creative individual on customer side to think through how they can kind of bring in this new technology and how they can also help transform the organization within. There's a big piece of that. I don't know if you will touch on that later. There is an organizational transformation that's linked to every deployment.
Yeah, and that's something I'd love to click through on with you on really that transformational piece of you have different use cases from sales, customer support, supply chain, but AI is often talked about as obviously that transformative technology that can really have an impact across all, and that actually it brings a lot of these different functions together. So curious to know, to get your perspective on this, on how it's actually driving more fundamental change across different business functions.
Yeah. So look, today a lot of things in the companies fall through in between silos. Like for example, your biggest insights about sales could be hidden in your customer support kind of logs, because customers are complaining about something, or there is maybe an opportunity to cross sell or upsell, right? But these teams are functioning completely in silos. Same with think about sales and finance and marketing and sales, or even engineering and sales and so on. And a lot of those gaps are filled by humans kind of moving information from one silo to another, creating lots of processes internally where, spreadsheets and other things, documents to just fill in information, even from sales to say product. With agentic transformation, you can actually fill those gaps for the first time, because all of those in some way were services, right, where you needed humans to do work, because software could only fix things in the past, right? You have a software for CRM or sales, you have a software for HR that only does HR, or software for customer support. Agentic software, agentic workflows can cut across and can actually adapt to your organization rather than humans adapting to a particular software. And that's a big change, right? And this will require business leaders, to think very creatively how the software architecture and organizational architecture of their business should be in like next 3 or 5 years.
Yeah, one of the use cases that we got from an earlier customer as a demo that I thought was just so precious was an engineer showed. So we try to have the employees of our customers demo this to their leadership. It's an opportunity for them to be highlighted. And an engineer showcased a Dust agent that was crawling sales call transcripts, extracting mentions of the project that she was working on, and extracting calls where a deadline had been promised that she had expressly asked to not have mentioned. And so what she got as a regular newsletter was the ability to know which salespeople to go poke on the shoulder about what they were saying about Project Alpha or whatever it was. And I think it's just a really interesting way to understand how transversely the information is going to be able to flow, now that we have essentially built this universal bus to transform, structure, and deliver the bits of information, the nuggets of wisdom that people end up scrambling and going to meetings all day to do their job.
Awesome. And I think maybe a topic, and I've seen it in the chat as well, is like the role of human and AI. But in general, we can't ignore that there is some underlying fear of, or a concern about, job displacement in a way. Like people are talking about it, or some people are fearful of that. And that's why I think in some cases there might be a distrust. But I'm curious to know, and maybe to get your perspective on this as well, Arvind, is how should organizations and maybe even governments or any type of organization address fears while preparing people for that work of the future where AI agents are simply a part of their jobs?
Yeah, great question. Probably the most pertinent one, for us as humans thinking about where our future is. This, most recent report, I was at Davos last week, where, this report was being talked about a lot, that, AI is going to, in the short, time period, displace 90 million jobs. And, but at the same time, it's going to create 150 million new jobs. And so I think, nobody should be confused that, AI is a good technology, it's going to enable us to do big things. It's going to be very assistive, in our day-to-day lives. but it's also going to replace, some of our work, and maybe for some of us, it's going to replace the entire job that we have. And so, what is the like? How do you prepare, for this world? And like, so first we have to remember that humans have been resilient. Like, we are the ones who invent technology, and then we are the ones who actually figure out how to make our lives better with that technology. So we'll like so overall, I have a optimistic mindset, and that's the one that I, like, as a leader, like, communicate to everybody in my company, that like humans are, we are the ones who build technology, and make the most out of it and make our lives better. But from a point of view of preparation, like, as an individual, like, we are saying that all of us, like, let's make sure we're not the ones, who are getting replaced. Let's make sure we are the ones who are actually, leveraging this technology and actually achieving maybe, 10 times more things, that we could do. So that's our message. That's the message that, every, CEO of a large enterprise should be, communicating, workforce, which is basically go and learn, like, like, figure out how you can use this technology, how actually you can take things that you do today, and instead of resisting AI, actually use AI to do those jobs. And it's okay, like, if you learned how to use AI to do those things, you can actually get, find, you'll actually also become more capable of doing things that you were never doing before, because now, like, you have this, like, ability to use, this super powerful tool. So that's the core message. Like, the core message is about, like, as an individual, like, figure out, like, a way for you to use AI, like, even if it is not, like, naturally fitting into your work, even if your employer is not giving it to you, like, there are plenty of public, AI tools, like, start to use them in your day-to-day work, and the like, if you, like, my claim is that if you are an expert at using a tool like ChatGPT, you will have a great job, maybe a better job in the future than the one that you have today, even if it gets replaced.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anybody else that wants to tune in?
Yeah, I think it's important not to sound too naive on some of the consequences that this will have in the short term. The changes are going to be important. I don't think it's the first time that we as a society are facing them, and I think people tend to forget how the horse and carriage crews thought about the first metro, and how the accountants that were maintaining actual spreadsheets thought about the invention of the digital spreadsheet when it was first created. The velocity and the scale of the changes are the challenge that we probably have, because it's not always clear that society is able to absorb change at an infinite pace, and the speed at which that change happen can create disturbances and potentially disruptions that will need to be addressed. I think the concentration of wealth that can occur as a result of I read somebody in the chat talking about a news agency they're managing alone, with the equivalent of 100 people's jobs being done and no supervision. I'm curious about the details of that, and I'm curious about the veracity of all the news that's being processed by the agency. It's a complex debate, and we could have it in another forum. But what is important is that some problems will not be solved by the technology, and they are going to be conversations that we need to have as a society. I don't think technologists are trying to shirk that responsibility. They're just pointing to the fact that those are two different debates. And science and religion have been going on as a debate for a long time. I don't think you solve them together by saying that it's one or the other. I think technology and societal action with the technology now as a reality is another one that we have to look at that way. But I really would join Arvind in saying that somebody knowing AI is going to do a better version of somebody not knowing AI in pretty much any job on a short-term horizon, and we should turn to educate as many as we possibly can on that.
I just wanted to add one.
Closing.
Sorry.
We have 1 minute left, so definitely want to make sure that you can also tune in, Surojit. Go ahead, and then we'll in 1 minute everybody will automatically be dropped out. So before you start, want to thank everybody for also listening in, and you guys as well for talking.
I'll keep it short. I think agree with what Gabriel and Arvind said, but I think this is a here and now problem that societies and governments do need to face. We need to figure out how to upskill people very rapidly. We shouldn't be ignoring this problem, saying, okay, this has happened before, because the pace of the change now is exponential. And that's the key difference. So this I think this is real, need to be tackled, and it's beyond individuals, companies. It's probably a societal and governmental problem as well. Of course, companies should participate and collaborate.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and see you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining in, and see the next speakers soon. We're taking a short break now, but we'll be back soon with other speakers. Thanks, everyone.